What's up, my friends? This is going to be a fun video. Today we explore how the kingdom of Malacca fell to 1,000 Portuguese men. It's an interesting battle, an interesting military takeover, but we need the rain to clear. We've had showers all day. Doesn't look like it's raining, but there's that thin mist of rain in the air. Malacca, back in the 14 and 1500s, was a very powerful kingdom, one of the most powerful in Southeast Asia, probably only rivaled by Ayutthaya, which was up in Thailand. And yeah, it's a very fascinating story. So, I hope you're ready for this video. It's going to be good fun. Alright, while it's still raining, we're waiting for the rain to clear before we head out, I'll explain to you why the Europeans actually wanted to come down here. Why did they come all the way around Africa and all the way to Malacca? It's basically because of the spice race. Let me show you on a map. So the Europeans started to love things like pepper, right? We're talking the Europeans up here. And all of that stuff was limited to the sea trade through here. From China, the Ming Dynasty, Chinese treasure fleet, all that sort of stuff, absolutely gangster trading vessels. They would go from here through in between the Strait of Malacca, in between Malaysia, Sumatra. They'd go to India, load up with stuff. And then from there, all of this trade that the Europeans were getting would pass mostly through the Red Sea. This is the Maritime Silk Road. Maritime just means the sea. So this is the sea version of the Silk Road, because the Silk Road originally was on foot with camels and horses and stuff would go through here, linking east to west. So the peppers and spices would come through here, through Cairo, and they would go to Italy. Italy in the Mediterranean Sea had a lot of amazing natural ports, and that was still the Roman Empire. And then they would also mark up the price of everything. Every time it changed hands in different ports, there's also a price increase so that, you know, different empires could benefit from it. And places over here, Portugal, Spain, and then the Dutch, the British, they got sick of paying so much for spices. They wanted to find the source themselves. So, Vasco da Gama, famous Portuguese explorer, he finally made it all the way around the bottom of Africa, the Cape of Good Hope. This is in the very late 1490s. All the way around, and he made it to India. And to give you an example of how much the spices were and how much profit there was in this took him almost a year to make it there and then back. And the cost of the finance for the trip, he was able to sell the goods for almost 100 times more than the cost of the trip itself. So that goes to show there's a lot of money in these spices and things like that. So this sort of started the spice race, and this started the monopolization, if that is even a word, the monopoly of the Maritime Silk Road and sea travel. So this brings us to the early 1500s. Just a couple years later, after Vasco da Gama makes it back, Portugal and also different powers like Spain and the Dutch, they were really looking at, okay, we need to get a fleet together and start doing this. So Portugal, rather than just have a few small exploring ships, they ended up basically having a very big fleet. They set sail and they wanted to set up trading posts. They realized they needed to actually have like a land presence as well. That's why places like Goa and Cochin have a lot of Portuguese forts and stuff like that. This is around the same time as the Vijayanagara Empire, which I've just made a video on a few videos ago in Hampi, over in India. Anyway, this brings us to here, and then they also keep hearing about Malacca, which we know Malacca was founded in the 1400s by Paramaswara. And if you remember, the Chinese treasure fleet, who prior to the Europeans, prior to the Portuguese coming, they were the big dogs in this area, right? They were huge. They had a monopoly on all of this, but they also had great relationships. They were very generous. They would give gifts everywhere they went. Well, they also had a great relationship with Paramaswara, and they helped him build an army and fight off the Siamese, the Siam Empire, which is in Thailand, just above Malaysia. Anyway, a lot of Chinese would set up little settlements in Malacca. They liked Malacca a lot. So that's why there's a lot of Chinese presence here and in Malaysia in general. So it's funny because if the Portuguese were like 40 years earlier, they would have ran into and seen the Chinese treasure fleet, which their ships were like 70 times bigger than anything Portugal had. The Chinese treasure fleet was insane, but China was also fighting the Mughals at the time, and then different paths of power and different emperors coming into power. They just had different ideas in terms of what China should do. So the Chinese treasure fleet ended up disappearing. They burnt the records and all that sort of stuff. Pretty crazy, to be honest. The ships were just left in the harbor and ended up just rotting. Some were set on fire. Crazy stuff, right? The guy who was head commander of the Chinese treasure fleet, his name was, it's spelt Z-H-E-N, but it's not pronounced Zen. It's like Juan He. Z-H-E-N space H-E. Interesting name. He was the head, and he only just got recognized like 500 years later, and they have like a statue and they've named some things after him. But absolute gangster. The OG, like Christopher Columbus is, you know, nothing compared to this dude. This dude's like the OG, right? Anyway, the Portuguese, they come here and then they hear about Malacca. So in 1508, they send a little Portuguese fleet down here to investigate and to hopefully set up a trading post. And this brings us to the beginning of our story. And a lot of people think that Malacca wasn't very wealthy. The rain's just stopping now. So let's head out and I'll explain to you how wealthy the Kingdom of Malacca was. So huge. The roads are going to be a little bit slippery, so we'll have to be careful. Streets. Surprisingly, still very busy. And it is a weekday. All right. Welcome to the Flor de la Mar, the Portuguese ship. I've been here before, and I didn't know this fact when I was here. The Flor de la Mar, after the Portuguese conquered Malacca, this shows you how much wealth was in Malacca, contrary to what a lot of people think, that it was just a small city, you know. This is one of the biggest treasure losses in sea history. This was on its way back from Malacca with all the goods from the Malacca kingdom, on its way back to Portugal, and it sank somewhere off the coast of Sumatra, never to be found. You know how much wealth was on that ship? This is a remake, of course. 2.6 or 2.5 billion pounds in today's money. gold, silver, mostly gold. That just goes to show how much money was here in Malacca, in the kingdom. 2.6 billion pounds was on this ship. And that is still at the bottom of the sea somewhere in the Malacca Strait or just off the coast of Sumatra. So if there's anyone that wants to do a bit of treasure hunting, let me know. When I make more money, I'll finance it. We can go treasure hunting together. But yeah, I've been here before. And I didn't know that about this thing. It's one of the biggest losses ever in sea trade history. There's more, like there's a Spanish fleet that was lost. People do find this stuff. There's a famous YouTube documentary about it. This crew in Florida, I'm pretty sure, they found a Spanish fleet that sank. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of gold. They found it after like 15 years of looking for it. Crazy as, huh? And just to think, this ship here, the Chinese treasure fleet, the ones we were talking about earlier, were another 70 times bigger than this beast. This mammoth of a ship. How insane. Supposedly also, there is 4 full-sized lions made of solid gold was on the ship. So somewhere in the bottom of the ocean. A lot of people have tried to find this shipwreck. 1998, there was a crew that was looking for it, but unsuccessful, of course. Man, 2.6 billion pounds, bruh. Pretty unreal. So, taking you back in time, 1508, there's a Portuguese man named Rui. So muggy after the rain. Portuguese man named Rui. He was one of the first few Portuguese here, and the objective was to set up a trading post. And the Sultan at the time, Mahmud, the Sultan of Malacca, unfortunately he was an opium addict. Opium was pretty common back then. It wasn't illegal. I'm pretty sure it was legal to use opium. But opium is a depressant. It's not like cocaine. Cocaine's a stimulant. Opium's a depressant, so it makes you slow. Cognitive functions aren't too sharp. So in my opinion, this is literally what led to the downfall of Malacca. The fact that the Sultan Mahmud was an opium addict and very young as well. So these Portuguese men that came, Rui de Rojo, his full name is, we'll call him Rui for short. They asked if they could set up a trading post, which he allowed. The Sultan Mahmud, he allowed them to do that. And then his advisors eventually convinced him otherwise. So instead of executing them, which would have been a good idea, they put them in prison. And Malacca was extremely unstable already. The Chinese, the Indian communities, the Indonesian communities that were here, they didn't like Mahmud at all. He would charge them a lot of tax, and he would favor the people in his direct party and family members way more than any of these other communities, these other communities held most of the wealth in Malacca. The Indians, the Chinese. So a fair bit of resentment was building in Malacca. That's unreal, huh? So he puts these Portuguese men, the 20 Portuguese men that were here trying to build an outpost, he puts them in jail. Next spot. Careful of the slippery tiles. That's a nice hotel. One of the most expensive ones in the city. love motorbikes, man. You can get away with like being sneaky and parking in spots that you previously wouldn't be able to. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to park there, but why not? So 1508, Rui and his fellow Portuguese men get locked up in Malacca. Now, back in Portuguese India, there's an admiral or a man that's very well versed in warfare, Afonso de Albuquerque, something like that. We'll call him Afonso. He was receiving letters from Rui, who was in prison here, detailing everything about Malacca, the city, how big the army was. And you might be wondering, how did Rui get letters from here all the way to India? Well, you know those people who were quite pissed off with Mahmud? One of them was an Indian guy, because his uncle had just been executed by Mahmud. So just another poor decision by Mahmud. A false accusation by another rival led to the execution of a bunch of men. And the Indian nephew of the guy executed, he did not like this at all. So on his trading vessels and his ships, he sent letters from Rui all the way back to India, Portuguese India. And for Afonso, it was way too nice of a deal and situation to pass up on. So 1511, Afonso sets sail and comes to Malacca. This is a remnants of a Portuguese fort. The interesting thing is, what I'm trying to find is the location of the bridge. There was only one bridge in Malacca at the time, which separated the royal area from like the village area that would go across a river like this, just like this. Because Malacca used to be right here on the sea. Just in front of this fort was technically all sea, and now there's tons of land and houses and development and stuff like that. So I reckon the bridge, the one and only bridge that was in Malacca at the time, would have been right around here somewhere. Let's have a look, see if we can see any remnants. It's really hard to see it. I thought maybe there'd be a little monument or something marking the spot where the bridge was. Maybe it's even there. That looks like some sort of bridge gate. That would make sense, wouldn't it? So yeah, maybe that is. Or is that just a watermill? Could be a watermill. So yeah, the Portuguese, they come and they set up a naval blockade. Remember, the Portuguese are super well experienced in battles, especially Afonso. That's his job. He is like a military guy, and he's itching for some sort of conflict. So he was he was ready to jump at this as soon as he, you know, got the word and received this information from Rui. So he came down here with 1,000 men, set up a naval blockade, because Malacca was surrounded by jungle and mangroves, so all of their food had to be imported. Now, this put a strangle on Malacca's resources, and Afonso demanded that Rui and the other 19 Portuguese men be returned to the ship, be set free. So Mahmud allowed that, and as soon as Rui was back with Afonso, he was able to give him all the details about the estimated size of Mahmud's army, 4,000, 5,000 men, the layout of the city, the best way to attack the city. It was perfect, like the perfect recipe for an attack. I reckon the bridge was around here somewhere, for sure. Because the Formosa, which is like the entry gate, that's just around the corner, straight over there somewhere. I think straight up on the hill. It's really hard to locate. I've looked through the maps, I've looked through all the records on stuff, and I cannot find anything about it. The whole time while the Portuguese ships were out in the bay with the naval blockade, they were in talks. Afonso was in talks with the Chinese community and the Indian community, Javanese, the Indonesians. And the Chinese threw a lot of support behind the Portuguese. The Chinese actually gave the Portuguese spare ships, which were smaller ships, because the Chinese were pissed off at Mahmud because he had taken their big ships to use in another fight against the neighboring power. What is this, brother? Is this the original bridge? The Malacca River. That's pretty cool, huh? 2,000 trading ships docked at the ancient port. I mean, imagine the Chinese treasure fleet sitting right there, because this was all ocean, don't forget. None of these buildings were here, from here and out. That's a water wheel, so it's not got nothing to do with the bridge. Let's go down to the sand, which is pretty far back now, of course, because everything's expanded. And I'll continue the story. There's some nice apartments to rent, but they're, as you can see, I've ridden for a few minutes, they're a little bit too far away. They're quite nice though, like you can get some for some good prices. Somewhere down here I can get all the way down to the sea. Let's have a look. As long as we don't get bogged. We made it all the way down. That's awesome. Whenever you ride on places like this where there might be a chance of salt water, you ride super slow so nothing flicks up. You don't go crazy fast because then you just get salt everywhere, and that's how you get rusted parts if you don't wash the bike. I'm going to take this to a bike wash straight after. Okay, this worked out really well. I can give you a perfect example. So, nice rocks, eh? I'd imagine this is a good little fishing spot. This is basically what it would have looked like. Just use your imagination and picture that fort that we were just at. That fort's right here. And this is beach. Pretty hectic. And this river, that split the royal quarters, which I'm not sure which side it was. I'm pretty sure that the royal quarters were this side. Mahmud's quarters and all the royal stuff. And then the normal village things were over here. And Mahmud's forces were divided by this river and that one single bridge. So the Portuguese, being extremely good with tactics, Mr. Afonso, he loaded up a small ship with swivel guns, rammed it into the beach on one side and used it as like a stationary gun. And he had his big ships, which would have been right here, just shooting constantly at both sides of the bridge because they had anti-ship guns, cannons, on each side of the bridge. And then he had the small Chinese vessels that the Chinese gave to them. He used them as the landing craft for his men, so they would have run up here and landed on the beach. Mahmud actually had like dynamite, like gunpowder charges on the beach, that if you walked on them they'd explode, basically like landmines. But they had these pads that they laid down to avoid walking on the sand. So you've got forces that jump on both sides. You got the big Portuguese ships out here that are just constantly bombarding the bridge so that the forces can't join. And Mahmud had war elephants. So he came down, charging down on his war elephant. The Portuguese are extremely advanced and used to this sort of warfare because they've been fighting Indians over in India for ages, and Arab kingdoms over on the Arab lands, because whenever they ran ships back all the way to Portugal, they would literally always get in conflicts. So they were pretty experienced with warfare. And they managed to startle the elephants. So then the elephants ended up going crazy and crushing a lot of Mahmud's force. So he fled at the back of his kingdom, and the Portuguese sent a few small ships down the river with guns on them, just shooting from both sides of the river. Pretty amazing takeover, to be honest. And then within 40 days, most of the city, you can picture it here and there, were just on fire. Because remember, Malaysian style houses are timber. It's all built from timber. So the city, the kingdom of Malacca just went up in flames. And in 40 days, the Portuguese had taken over Malacca. And for Mahmud, he ended up trying to regain forces and get some allies and stuff like that, and take back Malacca, but he was never successful. Definitely opium had a lot to do with it. The moral of the story, stay away from drugs, kids. Unless it's a stimulant like cocaine. I'm joking. So yeah, that's it. And then that's where they really worked out how much wealth was in Malacca. The Portuguese counted a total of like 3,000 cannons. Malacca was quite good at developing cannons. And also that ship where they loaded it up and sent it from here back to Portugal. And then it sunk somewhere that way. 2.6 billion pounds worth of gold from the Kingdom of Malacca. And that is the story of how one of Southeast Asia's biggest and wealthiest kingdoms came crashing down. He was also very young, Mahmud, so you mix that with opium usage, it's not really a good combination. Oh, Lesage, nice and slowly does it. And we'll look for a hose somewhere so we can give this beautiful girl a bit of a wash. Press that like button, man, so I don't have to hit you with an uppercut. It's free and it helps me. Did you know that? It's actually free to press the like button and to press the subscribe button. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? You can watch the videos for free and then you can help me for free. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Actually, that might be powerful enough to bloody squirt. Oh, hey. What do you reckon? That's perfect. Australia. Yeah. Just around the corner from that petrol station. It's so busy here. Oh my mia. This is a well. It's one of the oldest wells in Malacca. I'll probably explain more than this man knows. So things like this were the only source of fresh water for the Kingdom of Malacca, and also the reason why these sea kingdoms were popular. All the passing vessels that were trading, coming from wherever they were coming from, passing from east to west or vice versa, they would always stop at these sea kingdoms to load back up on stuff, because they'd just been at sea for weeks or months, you know. So they'd stop, they'd buy fresh water, food, fruit, they'd get fruit and stuff. A lot of these original these merchants, they would always get scurvy. The Portuguese, they suffered from scurvy all the way around the bottom of Africa because they had no fruit, and they were able to get fruit in like Mozambique, I think. Could be getting that wrong, that place, but it starts with M. There's a kingdom near the bottom of Africa. They were able to stop there and go inland and load up on a bunch of fruit. Scurvy's terrible, so all the merchants would suffer from that. So any of these sea-based kingdoms, if they set up a nice port, they always did pretty well. And they charge like port fees and stuff like that. So yeah, that's how these places did really well. One thing I find interesting, the Portuguese, especially because Afonso, towards the end, he had a very short temper, so they would always just attack. But even the early explorers, they ended up having some insane battles, some crazy naval battles, where a lot of Muslim kingdoms along the bottom of Africa and across in India, man, they had some crazy fights. Amazing naval battles, and even on land, you know. So many stories that you could tell from just from these adventures of the Portuguese coming around. But yeah, can save that for another time. The boys are admiring the bike. I've seen this from my hotel. What is this thing? I've never seen anything on it. It's like a railway train or something. I've never seen any. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's a train, but I haven't seen it operate. That's so weird, huh? It does like a full loop of the city, but looks like that hasn't been used in ages. What is this? Whoa, no way. That's filled with water. The basement. Fuck. Someone's full on home there. Definitely not going all the way out there, bro. No way. Mission aboard. Bro, could you imagine falling in there? That's disgusting. That's like still water. Brother. No thanks. Wow. Full on. That's someone's full on house, bro. Damn, man. I reckon I would have died if I went up there. I just had a feeling that that would not end well. There was a security guard asleep over there, and he woke up when I started the bike. Alright, how do we get to my hotel? It's such a strange river system here. I wonder what this was supposed to be. This whole train system. Very strange. Behave. Don't run off doing any wheelies at night. And we go down to level G. And then across to the hotel elevators. Level 16. So peaceful, man. Home sweet home. I extended for one more night so I could get this video done, and then tonight I can edit. Next video is another banger. I go through a small town from here on the way to Johor that's got some crazy war history. So that'll be a good video. See you in the next video. Peace out. Thanks for watching. As well, press the like button if you haven't already. Woo.